We've all heard that staggering statistic that a huge percentage of caregivers end up in the hospital or worse before the person they're caring for passes away. It's a terrifying thought, but it isn't a failure of will. It's a failure of biology. In this segment, Dr. Mark Sherwood breaks down the General Adaptation Syndrome, or why we literally run out of gas when the stress never stops. We're going deep into the tactical tools for brain recovery, from a medical grade ketone to peptides like Cerebrolysin. If you've been feeling like your brain is in the fog, this is the intel that you've been waiting for. So let's look at how we can refuel as caregivers. Welcome back. I'm Jen Fink, and this is Dementia Decoded. We're taking the confusion out of the caregiving journey by turning the light on for the path ahead. It's about more than memories. It's about strategy, clarity, and heart. So let's get into today's episode. 70% of caregivers end up in the hospital or deceased before their loved one. I think that study was a little less robust than it should have been. But I keep hearing that statistic, so it can't be 100% wrong.
No, I think the majority of the studies that look at caregivers show that they, on average or per capita, get sicker quicker compared to those that don't do that job. And I think that's a very general way to frame that. And I think that's fair. But because they're putting out some more, the hormone cortisol is necessary for functionality of life. We have to have it. That's your stress hormone. But when that thing's elevated the whole time, there's two things that happen. One is we need to understand back to genetics again, 2% change in 10,000 years. So if cortisol is a stress hormone that's produced when we perceive stress and we make that decision to release those chemicals, adrenaline comes out, cortisol is made. That is the same interpretation as it was 10,000 years ago, as if we're being chased by a lion trying to eat us. Now, if you're being chased by a lion trying to eat you all the time, there's no lion there. What does that do to your physiology?
Good point.
Well, your cortisol, chronically elevated, does two things. Dr. Hans Selye coined the term General Adaptation Syndrome. And what that means in layman's terms is we get so used to running at that high octane like that, we can't sit down. The body, that's your car. It's always running 100 miles an hour all the time. And even in that analogy, that car is not going to run that long at that high octane pace, which is the irony of the General Adaptation Syndrome, GAS. You run out of gas faster. The second part of that is if you're chronically producing cortisol, all your threats out here. You're chased by the lion. What happens to your immune system's ability to defend itself in here? Well, it has to go down.
Yeah, goes to
because
heck.
that's not your threat is out there, not in here. So it really does a number on your entire genetic expression, your entire physiology, and your entire immune system's ability to defend you.
Makes sense. I lead a weekly bike ride, and I actually sent out an email this morning that said, "Here's the ride for Saturday. Somebody else please step up because I'm tired and I don't know if I'm gonna make it." Because I know if I didn't ask, nobody was gonna step up. But it's
Right?
like I'm tired and I don't want to push it. Like I will still do a workout, but it won't be a 20-mile bike ride. And like I live in the Sierra foothills. I actually had to start this subgroup with somebody who's knowledgeable of the area to avoid too many hills, because you come home and you got some chores to do and you have some lunch and then you go face down on the couch for the rest of the day.
Yep.
No, that's not what I want to do. I do not want to do my bike ride on Saturday as some sort of like intense effort.
No.
I just want to go and have a nice bike ride and be with my group and, maybe stop at the cafe afterwards and people can have their pastries. I'll have some tea and, that's what I want. So of course it seems like I have to create all the things that I need I don't know why I march to a different drummer all the time, but I know, and I won't decide until Friday night or Saturday morning if I'm going to go because it's
I
important.
think that's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
And
movement is life, lack of movement is death. And how do we circulate things around the body? Blood flow. How do we
mhm,
detoxify? Blood flow. How do we get the lymphatic system going? Movement. I think that the more you move, the more you maintain your independence as well.
that's
Um,
true.
studies have shown as well, lifestyle does affect the deterioration potential of the brain. I mean, we all know that, and yet, um, I think that it's interesting that a lot of times today we just blame it on genetics, so to speak. Well, I've got it, but really, when you get down to it, the majority of disease processes are not quote unquote directly tied to specific genes. Matter of fact, only 3 or 4%. It's a multifactorial, multidimensional process, and it's our body's interaction with the world and the world's interaction with our body and other people. And like you mentioned, who we hang out with, what we do, how we do it, how we beat our own drum, and it's really up to us how we structure that.
So I hear a lot of things about like peptides, which I don't really know very much about. A lot of people always come to me with like the latest, greatest thing for Alzheimer's or dementia. I am very knowledgeable, but sometimes they think I'm more knowledgeable than I am. For an exhausted caregiver, is there a role that peptide therapy can play? This is the question I get a lot. My
Yep.
understanding is peptide therapy helps repair the cognitive wear and tear caused by this chronic stress and lack of sleep that we were just talking about.
Yeah, I've got a person that my wife and I've been working with for a while, and I'm a big fan of peptides and exogenous ketones. A lot of people don't think about the tool that we have. I'm actually having some medical grade ketones right now in my water. So, when the brain can't use glucose, it has to resort to something else. But what if there's nothing else?
Yeah.
It becomes insulin resistant. So that's why you can use a caregiver can pour, you could get to 40 to 50 grams of exogenous ketones that are poured in water throughout the day with a loved one, and you can feed that brain fuel all day long. So that's a nice, cheap, easy thing. So medical grade ketones, you want ketone esters as opposed and compared to ketone salts or ketones made from 1,3-butanodiol. I know that's a big old term, but
Say, oh, you're losing me on that
those
one.
things can kind of give you a little bit of diarrhea, and you don't want to have that in a situation like that. So ketone esters, medical grade ketones. But I like the peptide cerebrolysin. I think cerebrolysin is fantastic. It has been studied with Alzheimer's in the years
That's
past. It was successful with um, staving off the progression of Alzheimer's. And from the best I can tell, the best understanding that I have, though I don't know everything, it appears it worked very, very well until powers that be decided they didn't want it to work very, very well. And so I think we all know where I'm going with that. We as people, we need to begin to take charge of our own health care. And as a caregiver, you need to be the advocate for the
mm-hmm.
person you're caring for. If you won't, they can't advocate for themselves, and they're going to fall right into this system that becomes nothing but a wasteland when we have an aging population. It's not okay anymore. And so I would say exogenous ketones, cerebrolysin. There is some benefits, I think, to the peptides Cmax and C-Link. Those are two different ones. They also help the brain. Sometimes, and if there's a little Parkinson's kind of situation there, a little dihexa is probably good as well. It's an oral capsule typically, but it also comes in some injections as well sometimes. So there's things you can do, and I would never hesitate with someone with brain disease under controlled treatment settings, hormones, which are essential for brain function. So, you got those things that are going on. And I believe with taking those stances, you can actually stave off a lot of the brain disease and actually prevent it from developing further, even if it has tried to take root.
I believe it. I used to get 48-hour every month a 48-hour migraine that made it difficult to actually think. Like you could
Mhm.
feel thought processes slam into a wall of pain. And it got to the point where I just got so irritated. I was like, that's it. And I actually went to a private endocrinology clinic. They've proliferated in the last few years. I know there's pros and cons about that, and went on hormone replacement therapy for women. And I'm
Yep.
pretty sure, well, one, I don't get headaches anymore. I don't get migraines, praise be. But I swear, I feel like my brain is better now at
Yeah.
59 than when it was at 49. It's so incredibly freeing to realize that brain fog isn't just a side effect of being busy, it's a biological state that we can actually address. Whether it's optimizing hormones, exploring peptides, or just getting the right fuel into your system, you have permission to prioritize your own recovery. I can tell you from my own experiences at 59, you don't have to accept a declining brain as part of the caregiving journey. You can find all of the resources and links to Dr. Sherwood's work in the show notes. So take care of your brain today. It's the most important tool you have. And I will see you in the next episode.